Hey, where's the intro? Yes. I am Ondo. I am your host. You gotta quit fucking around. As far as I'm concerned, that's a good thing.
A way to sort of cause trouble.
Welcome to the Undergang Armchair.
Bring it.
Alright, hello and welcome back. It is episode 31. The sun is shining and everything is excellent. Now how about that intro, huh? Did I tell you guys about it yet? Beats kindly provided by MGT Beats. If you need some quality beats or other music, contact him. There'll be a link to that on our About page and our show notes. I did 3 talks today, which is pretty wild. I've been really going at it. So 3 talks today with 3 different interesting people. You guys can look forward to the hit parade of episodes coming up. We're really excited. But the last one today was our guest, Peter Funch, who was kind enough to squeeze us into his schedule before returning to New York tomorrow. He's a Dane who's been living in New York for 10 years. He's a photographer, and he inspired this week's theme, which is transition. He's made a beautiful photo project called Last Flight. His show, which is up right now at V1 Gallery, blends a lot of different things. It's really kind of achingly beautiful. It's a documentation of an event and of a place and of change and transition, both through a photographic sense, but also a more human sense. The man should really be noted for his ability to research. He really followed a lead, a project, an idea to a really beautiful place, which took a lot of work, but really has paid off with some really beautiful rewards. So it's a book, it's an event, it's the first of 4 projects he's doing in an anthology on America. I won't talk too much about it though, because he will tell you in his own words in just a little bit. Quickly, Sophie Dupont, friend of the show, is performing this Friday in Copenhagen, Marking Breath. It's a performance she does. It's actually going to be from 4:27 a.m. till 9:55 p.m., which is pretty epic amount of time there. However, unfortunately, only open to the public from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., where she marks each breath she takes from sunrise to sunset on a copper plate. That will be at Apart. There'll be a link to that on the show notes for this episode. Friday, 5 to 10. And, of course, you got to go see Peter's show. It's up now at V1. Like I said, it's engaging. It's beautiful. He doesn't hit you over the head with any ideas or morals or points. It's just an achingly beautiful portrait of a place, an event, a history, and a transition from one state to another on many different levels. It's part of CHP Photo Fest, the Copenhagen Photo Festival. There's 5 days left of that. We'll put a link up to that. You can also go and see photographic art all over the city. They have a program on their website that's worth checking out. And of course, during this talk, we talk about a lot of different things. We put up links to these sort of things on our website. So please check out the show notes for the episodes. They really help clarify and point to discussion points that we have. And that's it. Transition from the intro to the talk with Peter. Please enjoy. How was it being a Dane in Kansas, though? It's a good place to start.
It's just very exclusive. I was definitely the immigrant.
Did you feel like, I imagine a lot of people don't even really know what Denmark is. I know it's a country, but in their head, they have no picture of what it is.
No, they're like, oh, so you speak Dutch, and, the whole thing about...
I got a lot of that growing up.
Yeah. Right. Oh, so Holland is the capital, and
yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. All right, you guys smoke a lot of pot.
Yeah, but not from there.
Right. I guess that's more New York.
Sure.
But you mentioned something really interesting during the artist talk I saw, where you talked about some of the pictures are kind of about being a Dane in Kansas and the way you see things.
Yeah.
Which was, you had like a picture. I remember you were pointing to a picture of what looked like a saloon or something. It was just kind of a classic Midwestern building. Might have been a hardware store. I don't know, but.
Oh, with the facade that had a very American patriotic.
Totally. You know, and then like a picture of a Cadillac or a Lincoln or something.
Yeah, I mean, of course we have you have all these iconic elements when it comes to a city like this. And I think, you know, I've been in America for 10 years, but I'm still an immigrant. I'm still an outsider. I'm still the blonde, blue-eyed man who doesn't quite is integrated or have a voice or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I kind of appreciate that in a way because you look at things, you talk to people in a certain way. You always gonna have a distance that no matter how much you try, you're always gonna be the outsider.
And there's some freedom in that too.
Totally. I mean, I could say wrong things, I could do wrong things, and people will be like, "Oh, okay, he's the Dane, or he's the stranger."
Right. Yeah, I feel the same way here. You know, I speak Danish. I'm part of it, but I wasn't raised here.
Yeah.
So I don't. You know, I get to be like, oh, yeah, sorry, that just sounded funny because my Danish is fucked up or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, but that's kind of, I mean, that's a very nice way of working in this, you know, so American part of America, so isolated, so, you know, it hasn't been touched or affected except for economic elements, but it hasn't been affected culturally for so long. It's just the same and the same and the same.
And Danes, your average European, I would say, doesn't know that America.
No, not at all.
They know New York, San Francisco.
I mean, hardly any New Yorkers know it. They're like, wow, that's amazing coming out here, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it is quite a trip coming out there.
Yeah.
In a very slow pace way, which is nice.
Mm. People are friendly, though. There is some truth to that.
I mean, it's a shock coming from New York, going out to, you know, to the mid. I mean, this is in the middle of America, you know, coming out there, you know, I don't think this project would have happened in the same way if it was in New York or something like that, because people would just been, no, thank you.
Right.
But here we came to this kind of small town and we had conversation, we introduced ourselves, and within a couple of days, you know, I've been on the front page of the newspaper. We know pretty much everybody. And when we try to introduce ourselves, people are like, yeah, we know who you are.
Yeah.
So,
we got you.
Yeah. And that was nice. It was a relief. And people were extremely helpful. It was just like, beyond what I ever could imagine, you know.
There is really that community thing. We're here together. There's nothing else. So all we have is each other.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, kind of beautiful. My dad lives on a little island in the north of Denmark. Yeah. And they have kind of the similar thing.
Yeah.
You know, you'll know before you've gotten off the ferry to get there, people know you're coming. Yeah. You know, which has its benefits and problems, you know.
I mean, it's nice to experience something that looks more like a society where people have a relation to the next person in a society, even, you know, the neighbor, the guy in the store or anything like that. Yeah. It has a community, and that's quite nice to experience.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I guess I should set it up. We're talking about your show, which is up right now, Last Flight, which is part of a anthology, right?
Yeah.
And this is the first project of this anthology?
This is the first chapter, a project where there's going to be 3 other chapters. And it's taking place in a small town, mid-America. The town's called Atchison, and it's a town with around 10,000 people. And it is literal, you know, it's the mid between east and west of America, so it's like halfway over to the west coast.
Is it on the Mississippi, or what river is it on?
No, Missouri.
Missouri River.
Yeah, it's between Missouri and Kansas.
Okay.
And it's very small.
Yeah, in that special Midwestern way.
Yeah.
So, what's the grander scale project? We're going to talk more about this, you know, Last Flight, but you're working on 4 chapters. Are you trying to understand America, or are you trying to dig something up, or what's the big plan here?
I mean, I've been in America for almost 10 years, and I'm, you know, as we talked about, I'm still the stranger, the outsider, the immigrant, and I appreciate that. But I'm so curious about America. It feels like that it's such a big country. It's in a state now where something's gonna happen. You know, it's been in you know, had so many eras of, you know, being the superpower and all that kind of stuff. And now the economy is kind of falling apart. The dollar is falling apart. People are, you know, other countries are kind of figuring out, okay, they're just printing their dollars. So something's going to happen. You know, there's going to be a new industry been invented? Is the tech, is that a possibility to keep up the whole country? So there's definitely they're standing in front of a huge challenge. And I mean, I don't see that only as economic. It's going to affect the whole country. So I look at the country to see, this country is in a transitional state. Something's going to happen. I see it as a metaphorical aspect of how a civilization is going to continue.
Right. It's interesting that you think that, because I've often thought that, and then some of my American friends will be like, no, dude, everything's the same. It's the same old bullshit. But I feel like things have to change, that or collapse. It really, in reality, and I think there is somewhat of a movement to back to smaller communities, back to self-sufficiency.
But all that made in China, everything you have in America is made in China. I mean, of course, people are trying to put their production back to America as much as possible. The cars, everything they can. Right.
But it's just not financially viable. It's the problem.
No, it gets a little expensive, but I mean, that's what you see now we're in Denmark, smaller countries like that, where they really try to do that, keep it in-house in a way. But I mean, I would say I use this whole, what they stand in front of now just as a metaphor for this is a society something's gonna change to continue. Something, we have to evaluate what's gonna be the next step to take a few more clever steps in a way.
Right. And what has to change and what will resist change.
Yeah.
Let's go way back though. You're obviously from Denmark. Did you grow up around Copenhagen, or where'd you grow up?
No, I'm born in Falster, which is, it's like the Midwest of America. It's very slow. And then I grew up in Jutland, north of Aarhus, in a small town, just like Atchison. And then I moved to Copenhagen, studied journalism, and then first I moved to London, and then moved to New York afterwards.
So were you thinking that you were going to be a photojournalist?
No, I think at the time I started studying, it was like the focus on photography and the focus on journalism. And it was just a way for me to learn photographing and understanding pictures, and also learning the tool of research and documentary. So in that way, I could, come out, do narrative stories, true or not true. That was not really the issue, but just a way of figuring out how to tell a story.
So did you think right away, I want to tell my own stories?
I mean, not right away, because I worked at a newspaper and had a very good time there. But I realized I bump into the same conflicts every time, that, it needs to be told in a certain way. And these are the rules of a newspaper, how you do it. And that's completely fair. I mean, I understand that you have to work with reliability, and not reliability, but a certain amount of truth here to be able to communicate as a newspaper. Yeah. So I was like, but there must be other ways of doing communication than just newspapers. Right. And then discovering the galleries and another world of showing projects.
Right. And you started a gallery before you moved, right?
Yeah. In 2002, we started We1 Gallery in Copenhagen. Yeah. With that curiosity, what is a gallery? How can we redefine our understanding of doing a gallery?
Right, and there was kind of a time when people were realizing that there was a lack of a certain type of gallery in the art world, that there was a potential,
Yeah, and especially in a city like Copenhagen at that time.
But you moved pretty soon after that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Did you always feel like you had to get the hell out of here, or was it just kind of like, what was the impetus to leave Copenhagen?
I don't know, I always been curious about not being in the comfort zone of your own country, being in another place where you don't know, you're new. And I think that's a essential aspect for me of being a photographer. You're always another place where you're not used to be. You look at things in another way.
That's kind of an exploring the world method.
Yeah, totally the explorer.
Right. So what brought you to New York, aside from the fact that it's New York? Was it just always kind of going that direction, or?
I've been there a few times, and I was just so fascinated with it's New York because it is New York. Because it is New York.
Because it's fucking New York.
And it is fascinating, and it keeps developing, and it keeps, new people changing, and it's a fantastic place, and it's such a tempo. It's such a fascination. Visually everything. It's an amazing place.
But can you handle it? Because to me, I feel like New York's trying to kill me whenever I go there. And that's totally a temperament thing. I realize that.
Yeah. Sure. Now I moved to Brooklyn and with the family, and that's just another part of New York.
Right.
Brooklyn is an amazing place. It's another pace, but still very interesting.
Yeah. So it's fine. Do you?
Yeah.
New York's fascinating. It's certainly not Denmark. That's for sure.
That's for sure. It's so far away from it.
Yeah.
But that's also nice.
Yeah. Was it hard to professionally work there? You moved there as an immigrant and had to start from zero, I assume.
Yeah. I don't know. I would say, coming there as a Dane was quite a challenge. Everything we used to is small scale, the way we talk, with our sense of humor, our approach that we have no respect for authority, and just like
really
things needs to be done, and we do it our way. We think it's the best, and it's just like, okay, we don't work like that here. Oh, okay, why not?
Right, what the fuck?
Why not?
But you made it work, obviously. You have to sell yourself too. That's the other thing about America is like you have to really, they have that saying in Danish, which I really love, to be frem I din skål, to be very forward and ask for what you need. Ask and you shall receive. You know? And not everybody can survive in that sort of environment.
It definitely took me a while to figure out that, wow, it really is about, promoting yourself in a certain way.
All right.
That was tough times and those good times.
Yeah. What do you think about the difference between New York and Denmark? What is it that keeps you there in a way?
I don't know. I try not to think about just like Denmark, America, because it's such two different things.
Right. They don't even have the same.
It's more like, Europe versus America.
Yeah.
I think that's quite interesting. I think, New York. New York is so different from America. So when I talk about America, I think about New York because that's where I live. It's a certain openness. You can define your own life. You can completely settle in your own way. You can, do exactly what you want, and nobody's gonna look at you and say, "That's pretty fucking weird what you're doing now." We never seen anyone doing that.
That's what New York's for.
Yeah.
In a way,
that's the place. What it is.
Yeah.
That's what's amazing about it.
Yeah.
And of course, looking at that and looking back to Europe, you're thinking about, wow, it's also nice that they have such a long history and such a civilization and a culture of debate that keeps going on, and you have so many newspapers, everybody's saying...
Debate is key.
Yeah.
That is something. And it's funny, I was telling someone earlier today, too, I feel like I became American by moving to Denmark.
Yeah.
In a weird way, because there I was just American with a Danish history, and in a way I was kind of different because I had a parent who was first generation, foreign, etc. Yeah. But upon moving here, I really, really highlighted some of these differences. Debate again.
Yeah.
The debate is a shit show in the U.S. as far as I'm concerned. There is no reasonable tone.
Yeah.
You just have to turn on the television to find that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is really a country built by people who were settlers, explorers, and they still have that attitude.
Yeah, it's quite amazing how that keeps. It's so much there. It's not, why should we discuss that? I'm just doing it. I'm doing it my way. You're doing your way. Just like let's
saddle up. Let's go. Yeah, it's interesting because it's done. We're done expanding. America is the borders are defined,
and that's what I'm. What's so interesting. What is? You can't just keep expanding. The country's.
Right.
It's big. There's a lot of space, but think about the next move, how we do it, because you have to.
Right, and think about what's happening at home. You can't just burn your bridge and move on, which is goes back to the problems we were talking about.
Yeah.
But when you moved to New York, you started on Babel Tales, right?
Yeah, that's the whole fascination about living in New York. I was so fascinated with the essence of photography, the street photography, shooting in the street, the people, the chaos, the randomness, the diversity of people. And I was like, looking at old, big masters in photography like August Sander and all that kind of stuff. I would love to do something about humanity in a place where there's so many different peoples, and also pushing the photography in a way where it's not, it's not necessarily true, it's not necessarily fiction, it's not a lie, it's not the truth. So I started this project about, I started trying to shoot in the streets in New York, sitting down on one corner, shooting for a long time, keep shooting people passing by. And I mean, I think maybe I introduced, a lot of my ideas, projects come from films, other projects, other artists, other, ways of looking at things and then tweaking it in a certain way. So this came from my idea of the film Smoke, where Harvey Keitel and William Hurt. William Hurt?
Yeah. Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. They're sitting in the kitchen and Harvey Keitel, he's taking out his photo albums with the images he's been taking from his shop, same time every day.
Right.
And it's just like endless images, same street corner and people passing by, and Hurt is looking at the photos. It's like, wow, it's so fascinating. It's so based on a routine, but it's still poetic. And it's like, wow, that's amazing. That's my ex-wife walking there. And then a couple of pages later, it's the same thing happening, And there again, that's weird. What is he doing there in this area? What's going on?
Right, and the whole story unfolds.
Yeah. And I don't think much more is happening, but it's just like, it's such a poetic moment.
Right.
And the same way I want to turn this idea into a project. So I did the same, sitting down on a street corner, same time every day, and keep shooting people. And I was sitting at a bus stop in Tribeca, photographing people, and then photographing, the people waiting for the bus, and people start smoking. And I was like, wow, it would look amazing if everybody was smoking in this picture. All the people I've been photographing, and it was just like, okay, that's the idea.
Bam, I can do that.
That's the whole project. And then I just, I did several images in the same way, and it's like start building it up, and then, the first having 3, and then start still shooting a lot of images till like, okay, now I have like 16 images, and I can say, we can publish this and get it out. And so it's like, manifest, this is my idea, my approach, a way of looking at people, humanity, relations, photography, fiction, truth.
It seemed to me like it was kind of a magic spell you were casting on New York.
Yeah, I mean, of course it plays with that whole idea of randomness, but also with a little bit of sense of humor.
Well, I come back to the one always of no one's touching the ground, or almost nobody. They're running or floating something. Yeah. And I imagine you as a wizard going, wing, and nobody's feet are touching the ground anymore. And I also imagine it as a way for you to understand New York.
Sure.
To be there and engage and say, here I am. What am I doing here? What is this?
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. I would say I tried not to. I mean, I was shooting in New York. It would always be New York, but I tried not to be too like romantic about the idea that it is New York by having certain buildings in the background. I mean, I use Times Square one time or 2 times, but it's like I kept it very anonymous.
Right, very neighborhood.
Yeah. But it had a feeling of being in the streets of New York, and that was fine. I mean,
Yeah. But yeah, in a weird way, maybe not consciously, it felt like you introducing yourself to New York, like in a way it's your way of grappling with the fact that you're new and seeing it on a neighborhood level and on a people level.
It was really a fantastic way, just like people watching, sitting on the corner.
Yeah. Didn't New York have the rules where you had to get a permit in order to photograph with the tripod?
Sometimes not. Definitely that was down in Financial District where I did get the permit.
Yeah.
But usually not. I mean, there's no problems. People are very extremely friendly. Super
Did
nice.
people stop and talk to you while you were doing it?
That's also how some of the images came about. There's one called Doppelganger where the same people are repeated in the image. So you see like one person being repeated in the image just with different clothing, which started out of the idea or a little episode of me sitting or photographing on the corner, and one guy coming over and asking me, "What are you doing? I've seen here for so long. What are you doing?" And I explained him the project. It's like, "Wow, that's interesting." And then I thought, okay, if he's seen me, I definitely seen him. So I went back and then looking through the images, and it's like, oh, he's there with that, but different clothing. And then it's like, oh, that's a nice kind of doppelganger approach to.
Now, did you ask them to come back, or did you have to just wait for them?
No. I just waited. I mean, I never staged or I manipulated the images, but I never directed anyone to do certain things. I didn't hand it out anything.
It's funny the stories that happen from that sort of thing. Also, so I make frames. I have framed a lot of these images that we're talking about. The one with everybody yawning on it.
Yeah.
When that's at the frame shop, you could pick it up and point it at anyone, and they would yawn. It had this incredible power. Yeah. You could just point it at someone, and they'd go, And so we had so much fun taking your picture around and pointing it at people.
Yeah. They wouldn't sing.
No. I saw I mean, it was a workshop, so everyone was tired. But. I mean, so you did that. You really did that project, and you did it in Amsterdam a little bit. You did it in Copenhagen a little bit, right? Or Denmark.
Yeah, in Denmark. Yeah, Amsterdam and Denmark. In Denmark, it was for the what's called the World Expo 2010 in China.
In Shanghai, yeah.
Where we did this. There was Martin de Tour, Jeppe Hein, and Bjarke Ingels did the pavilion, and I did the photos. Okay, but it was more like kind of. Fairy tale documentary inspired photos I did of Copenhagen, Denmark, how it was as a society, how it worked as a welfare society.
It's more of a job, really.
Not really. I mean, it was still with I wrote. I mean, they had something. You should tell a story about this, this, and this, and say, I think we should do it this in this way. And it's like, yes, please do that.
Right.
So I mean, a commissioned artist or whatever you call it.
Right.
But it was very interesting for me to coming back to Denmark and photograph because I haven't done that in, I don't know how many years. So it was
right. And there you transitioned to being an outsider in a weird way.
Yeah, in a way. I mean, it was just so fascinating, coming to Denmark and enjoying these amazing, beautiful summer landscapes and looking at people in the street in a completely different way. And also one of them photographing at Nørrebro, the train station, with people meeting, going to the train in the morning. So it's not, it's maybe not the most beautiful aspect of the people in the, in that morning, but it looked nice and people looked, they looked good and sometimes a little tired. But I've never in my life got so much attention about, what the fuck are you doing there? Get out,
Really?
Yeah. There's you should not photograph me here. This is my, it's much more like, this is my morning. You don't come here photograph me.
Go fuck yourself. No, it's funny because, New York, everyone's so used to being photographed that it doesn't matter anymore. You can never expect to be private in that way. Yeah. But here, maybe you can.
Yeah. So, that was quite a shock, especially after spending so much time in New York, there's like never an incident, never any problems and people very friendly and that's quite interesting.
So when you finish this project, you must have a certain point said, okay, I did it. It's done.
I think I had a goal saying I wanted to make 40 images and I made, I can't remember now, 43 or so.
Yeah.
40, around that.
You must have got tired of all the Photoshop too.
Yeah.
Wasn't it a ton of work?
It's a ton of work. I had a very good friend of mine helping me with putting it together, and it was kind of a collaboration that way.
Okay.
And that was an amazing way of making images because I came with this certain approach, and he added his approach and ideas, and so that was a very strong relationship about making these images. And I'd say that I miss. But I don't miss the whole computer aspect of making a project because it's just like
it must have been thousands of images too.
It's a lot, you shoot 1,000 images of a day, and each corner you shoot for 10-15 days. So it's just endless amount of images you look at.
You must have a really big hard drive.
Yeah, it's a server system.
But so you did it. You accomplished what you were doing.
Yeah.
And then did you immediately know what was next, or were you kind of lost in the fact that you had just given birth to a very long and extended child,
it's quite interesting because you could say, of course I could continue this project to endless, but it's just like...
People do that.
Yeah. But it's like 40 images with the same idea. That's quite a lot. You
Yeah.
know, that's quite an amount of repetition.
Yeah.
You know, the abstract painting, you know, in 40 different ways. Is it now a language, etc., etc.?
Right.
No, I mean, I really needed to reset myself after making this. And I think that's also why I spent almost 3 years in, you know, till this is out. You know, spend quite a lot of time testing new ways of making images, a new approach, a new, you know, technique, a look, and all that kind of stuff. And, but still want to continue some element of what I've been doing before, you know, that kind of fragmented story, you know, many narrative stories put into one image. That's kind of cubism, a way of looking at a photo, you know, at a photo.
I mean, that idea can be fleshed out in a lot of ways, but you know, you had a technique which you did, and finished.
And then I was so eager to have some, you know, work on something where I didn't have any rules. I didn't have any specifications. I mean, just like no rules to myself. It was like an open way of doing things.
Right.
And that, I mean, I was just like, how do I do that? How do I find that? And then, I mean, how did it start? It started just looking at you know, reading a lot, looking at a lot, you know, many newspapers.
Right, you do a lot of research.
Yeah, I mean, I love research,
Yeah.
and I love reading articles, you know, newspapers, the New Yorker,
Right.
the Guardian, all of it. And
Yeah.
just like reading all these articles about places that's changing, all these weirdo, wacko stories you see here and there.
Right, and you remember then to grab that and think, I could look more into this.
Yeah.
You know, because I do a lot of that reading too, but it's only now occurring to me, wait a second, you could actually go on. You know, there's more to find out.
Yeah. There's much more to find out.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, I think it's also, you know, the reading what's going on now, the reading in history and looking at old paintings, you know, all these, finding painters like Robert de Ruyn, you know, that made paintings in France of the monuments that were in a kind of state where you couldn't quite, are they getting built, are they taken down, are they getting burned down, or is it a revolution, or what's happening now? And there's something so fascinating about this old historic paintings that was so hard to figure out. What is the story? What is the appreciation here? What is the moment in it that they romanticize about? And that kind of fascinated me a lot.
Right, you mentioned in the talk both classical photo documentaries, Robert Frank, that sort of stuff, of the Midwest and America and Americana and sort of, and then also classical painting. Yeah,
but of course, a lot of classical painting, you know, from Holland, Belgium, from the 16th, 17th century.
Still lifes too and stuff like that.
Yeah, but let's paint what we appreciate. Let's paint what we glorify. Let's paint what we just been eating. And I mean,
right. But that's a really fascinating meld of these like 70s and 80s classical American photo books, together with classical European Renaissance, Dutch school of painting.
I think, there's something so simple, something so pure about these paintings, of still lives, of flowers, of oysters, of lemons, peeled orange, asparagus that looks like something you really want to eat. There's something so pure and simple about it. And then the whole story behind this is so, amazing. This is what we, objects of desire, things we appreciate, things we glorify. I mean, that's so beautiful,
And layers of meaning and symbology.
Yeah.
I'm thinking a lot in my own work about symbols, and it's such a tough area because everything is symbolic and nothing's symbolic at the same time. It's so hard to balance those things.
Yeah.
But how on earth did you then, with these ideas, here you are looking at these photo books, you're reading newspapers, you're thinking about classic American photography. How in your brain, are you just thinking, like keeping it in the back of your head, okay, when I start a project, I also want to think about Dutch painting?
Yeah.
Or do you build it beforehand? Do you know what you're doing beforehand?
To some extent, after the Babel Tales, I started doing these triptychs where I photographed scenes, but split them up into 3 images. So, very much inspired by a Francis Bacon triptych, where it's 3 images of the same situation, and it could be from three point of views. It could be same point of view, but a little bit twisted situation. Just that idea of a fragmented moment in a way.
And you're messing with photography as a material again.
Yeah, always photography.
Yeah. But I mean, also just the idea of what a photograph is and what it represents. You're referencing that again with that project.
And then I did a demolition. I mean, I've always been fascinated with the demolition, just like the moment of, when a building is in the moment of from being a building to be a ruin. There's something very interesting.
Transition.
Yeah. It's something else. You don't have a word for it. It's not people say, you do something about destruction. No, I do not do anything about destruction. I'm trying to describe something we don't have a word for.
Right. Transformation, I guess.
Yeah, but that's just what goes between the two.
Phase change. Yeah.
So I photographed this building in College Station in Texas, where a hotel was taken down, and then I set up 6 different cameras, and then I, with help from 2 other people, and then we photographed the building coming down, and then one triptych is, 3 images from 3 different point of views, seeing the building coming down. There's something so fascinating about this, 3 point of views, like sharing a moment in a certain way. And it's like, I can do this in a much more, progressive way, and say, what about if there's 20 cameras or 40 cameras or whatever? And then I start, and then people could be doing this and that, in front of the implosion. They could be on the phone. They could be in the gym. They could be, so that was the kind of
that opened the door.
That opened the door for this project. And then I was like, but it's going to be much more simple images, because if we have to understand them being related, there needs to be simple. And that kind of boiled it down to, let's try. I want to make simple images now. And then, making images about this transitional moment. And then I was thinking, but that could be shown in many other ways. I can illustrate or do that in so many different ways of, the flower. I don't have flowers. The flowers falling apart. The
banana peel getting old.
Everything has a development in time. Everything has a transition. Everything has a, is growing or falling apart in a very interesting way. And
right.
So I wanted to, within that very small area of the town, just trying to find all the examples and objects and people who was in that stage of transition.
Right. Right. And so, what I found really interesting is you found out that this was the town Amelia Earhart was born in, right?
Yeah.
The bridge was built the same year that she disappeared?
So this is 2 parallel stories. She disappeared in 1937, and then she was declared dead in 1939.
That's what it was.
The bridge was started in 1937, and the bridge was finished in 1939 and named after her.
Right, so there's a transition in 2 directions.
Yeah. So already there I had, this is quite a magical...
That is almost too good to be true.
Yeah. Yeah, we were like in the studio, look at these numbers. Right. That's fucking amazing.
Yeah, good job. And that right there is a test to the power of research.
Yeah.
That you were both sharp enough and good enough to uncover that. Because you're the only person, in the world, ostensibly, that figured that out and did something about it.
Yeah, it's I shouldn't say now it's a coincidence, but it's just the magic of researching, spending all the time at the library and looking at all the local archives and just like reading about her, the bridge, whatever happened, and looking at all the books that was written about her and finding, but there's a book called Last Flight about her. That's a very nice title.
Right.
And then I added an American anthology.
Right.
So it's just like going into the getting a cardboard box with just photos and books and everything. So like start looking through, spending a whole evening there with 3 other guys, just what's going on here or what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating, and and it really creates a really strong foundation for the work, because the work is aesthetic and it's beautiful, on its own, but it gets so many more dimensions by having the story behind it, the coincidence, the crossing paths, the transition of this bridge being torn down. I mean, I guess we should say for people listening that it's photographing a town where this bridge, Amelia Earhart Bridge, is being demolished. Yeah. It's being taken down. And that's kind of the central focal event, but it's not the only event at all. And, it's also a portrait of a town and a time. Yeah. And change, transition,
people, families, arm wrestling,
rednecks.
A lot of rednecks.
Which they called themselves, to be fair.
Yeah, and the reason why they call themselves is because they get a lot of sun in their neck.
They have a really red necks, it's true. So now you've done it. You did it. You hung it on the wall. People can go see it right now.
But it's not only hanging on the wall. I would say after I've done quite a few photo exhibitions, I was getting so fed up with that idea of images on the wall, and it's not really including the space it's in. So I start playing with the idea, well, can I deconstruct or do something to the gallery that has an element of what was happening in the town? So I've been doing cheap walls, plywood walls that looks like they're in a state of, is this a renovation? Are they being taken down? It's definitely something that looks temporary. And hanging images on those walls, putting images on the floor, having images standing up against the ground, the walls, images in between each other, and even images outside the gallery. So there's also in the spaces that's kind of connecting two rooms that's part of the gallery. So I try to really play with the idea that you are in a space that's also in that kind of transitional.
Right, and the photos, some are hung kind of in front of each other in a weird way, not completely, but kind of abutting over each other and everything. Yeah. I mean, you really controlled every level of this process all the way through, which is a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So yeah, of course, it's a lot of work, but it's very fascinating work. It's nice to push the boundaries of how you can do this kind of suggested narrative story where you have so many angles to approach it. You have so many ways of understanding it. Right. And, just expanding the way you go in a gallery or see an exhibition.
What about the process of actually going to the town? I mean, you told a story during the talk about the local university and becoming essentially friends with a photojournalist class there and enlisting the help of all these students. Yeah. Do you think that performance was really a part of it in a way? I mean, because, you've got tons of photographs of this bridge being blown up from all sorts of different angles.
Yeah. I mean, first it was, of course, also a financial aspect because, we tried to, it was done very much like a film production, but we tried to keep it, low budget. I mean, really low budget, because it needed a lot of equipment, it needed a lot of crew to photograph it from all these different angles. We had to set up the cameras, and there needs to be people by each camera that shot the event. Right. So we found a college that had a journalism photography line or class, and then I included them, introduced to what I was doing and what my approach was, my fascination with the American photo Bibles, the history of American photo books, and how I want to approach this project, these images, this event.
Were they enthusiastic?
Yeah, they're very excited about, it's very young people, they're like 18, 19 years old. Right. And that was also the kind of the challenge, do they really understand what I'm doing? I was not dumbing it down. I was just like, right. Do they understand the aspect, and can they do this and they're not falling asleep in the morning? I mean, I was just like...
Right, but that's part of being a film director. It does really relate to that not everybody on the crew is part of the vision of the film. They're just part of the nuts and bolts of making the film.
So, it was really fascinating to have these young people included, and some are just like party people, and some I thought I could rely on a little bit more. Do you know some? Because I was using their friends and people to photograph, in some of the images.
Right.
And of course, I was trying to figure out what was possible and what was not possible.
And who was reliable and who wasn't.
Yeah, and of course, sometimes it's like, hello,
right.
I think we discussed this, but I mean, some that were really helpful, but there was just some incidents of, that's weird.
I swear I was just talking to you about that. Yeah, but I mean, that is, you were a project manager.
Yeah.
And that's the whole nature of it.
Yeah.
Are you going to do that again with the next project? Are you going to try to enlist a bunch of people and do it on this level again?
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea. I want to kind of duplicate the method or the approach, the pattern in it, but not just repeating the story. I'm not going to find another bridge, another place.
Right.
It's a new story with new aspects and more dimension, maybe even more, contradiction in it.
Right. It must develop as it goes.
Yeah,
you can't control everything along
Yeah.
the way. A final question about Last Call. What about the editing process?
Last Flight.
Last Flight. Sorry, excuse me. Last Call on Last Flight. The editing process must have been pretty intense in terms of figuring out what it was you were going. It's just the editing is such an important part of a photo project. What you leave out has so much to do with what you include, etc.
I think the major change for me this time was I tried not to do anything in the computer this time. Of course I edited images with the colors and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But that was just like that's the aesthetic part, but the narrative is done all with prints on the wall, so I could understand how things were relating to each other.
Just comparing things, putting them up, taking them down.
How two simple images created a new story, a new language, a new vision, a new metaphor, some elements like that.
Right.
So it was so much, a very simple, a very free way of working, where it's like all about the prints. How does it work in a space next to each other?
Right.
And that was quite amazing. And I think that's also how I could push it so. I mean, for me, how I could push it so far away from the last project I did.
Right. Right. Just changing the nature of that process.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I often fight with that. I'm a film photographer, and I thought that would give me more freedom to be away from the computer, but it just means on top of editing on the computer, I'm also scanning, which is a fucking pain in the ass. And so I really try to go back and get prints made and do that, like going into the darkroom or something.
Yeah. I don't quite have the patience for the darkroom now, because it was not about that,
Right.
Everything's done digital, everything's done, high technical equipment to make the process easy, because it is quite an ambitious project out of the amount of people we have and the resources.
Right, and possible. Just the nature of doing it.
Yeah.
No, and I'm not anti-digital, and I'm starting to realize for certain types of photography, it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
If I shoot with a large format camera, sometimes that can't be replaced, or at least that it can, but, But shooting with 35 millimeter or something like that, you might as well just shoot digital.
Yeah.
But tell me about the new project. You're going to Cape Canaveral? I mean, do you want to even talk about it, or is that kind of top secret? Or
no, I don't. I'm going to Cape Canaveral in Florida.
Very, very historical place for Americans.
It's a very amazing place, and it's all about the perfect human being, the perfect technical scenario, the perfect, the human being's point of view out to the space. Everything about grandness is there. Everything big, everything beyond humanity is there.
Unless you're one of the people who thinks that it was all.
Yeah. But I think I just want to leave it there and say, that's the perfect story, and
it is.
Yeah. And maybe there's a few hiccups within that.
Right. Well, I mean, that's your job as a researcher and a photographer, is to dig that up.
Yeah.
I saw also you just announced, and this is a great format for talking about it, a Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah.
For a project in Mount Baker in Washington. What's that about? Tell me about that.
So this is what is it? This is charity or non-profit project I'm doing in collaboration with Project Pressure.
And this is separate then
it's completely separate,
from American Anthology.
But it has a same relation. It's a bit of a same story I realized afterwards, after I started researching.
Yeah.
Because it's about the Project Pressure is a fundament about glaciers retreat, where you, as a photographer, anyone can go up and take pictures of glaciers over time with a geotag, with the coordinations of where you've been taking it. Mm-hmm. And then you can over time see how the glaciers retreat. And this is kind of a big kind of, historic document that's going to be created over the years.
What is Project Pressure?
That's a guy from Denmark living in New York, Klaus Teichmann, who started this and now doing, I think, almost full-time working on this project. And it's supported by NASA, it's supported by BBC. I mean, it got approved and acknowledged by so many people.
Wow.
So it's quite an amazing project. And I know him and I heard about the project. I was like, wow, this is such a good idea and it's good to do such project. So he's been asking artists, international artists, photographers, if they want to contribute to this project. And I was like, yeah, but how am I going to do this? And then I start thinking about, but maybe the glacier is kind of related in the same way that the bridge is getting demolished. It's also in a
transition.
Yeah, so I saw the same pattern. And then I found this, I was researching glaciers in America, and I found this place up in Washington State, Mount Baker, where there's a mountain in an old historic, what's called National Park, that has 10 glaciers. And then I was Googling about what is the story about this mountain, and found endless amount of postcards. I mean, endless, hundreds and hundreds. So I've been buying postcards of this mountain, which is so beautiful, almost like a Fiji mountain. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to use these postcards as the reference to see how much the glaciers have retreated. So it's not going to be very precise, but it's going to be the idea of something retreating in that very romantic way.
Right, nostalgic.
So that's one part of the project, and then there's many more to it. But in order to do this, since it's a non-profit or charity, we're trying to raise money for it. So I started a Kickstarter campaign. Mm-hmm. So Kickstarter.com, and you could Google Expedition Mount Baker.
Yeah, we'll put a link up to it on our website.
Right. And there's something about that for another 3 weeks. And we're trying to raise, I think it's around 10,000 for production and just like camera, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Well, not cameras because it's sponsored.
Right.
But just the flight and all the people
hotels
coming out.
And all that. Have you been to that area before?
No, not that far. I mean, it's beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
That whole area of Washington. I mean, Seattle's a nice city. It's nice, but Puget Sound, the Olympics, the mountain chain there, all that incredible area. Yeah. And that's a whole different part of America. Yeah. It's a different part of the settlers. A different type of settler ended up there. Yeah. You can say.
Yeah, that's not good. I was trying to find a lot of story, conflicts and all that kind of stuff. There's not much going on. It's just very
peaceful,
so calm. And so I think I want to leave or try to leave that anything out that has something that looks like a conflict, and just like focus on that glacier and, everything that in the nature has a transition. So I'm sure it's going to be a lot about water, animals, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then I'm going to use a technique that's based on, from that time the first postcards was made. It's called RGB separation. It's a photo based on 3 photos in the colors red, green, and blue. And when you combine them, it gives the color photo, and that way you can track some motion in the photos that has some motion.
You mean like how the sky turns a different color when it's the blue channel?
You can see a cloud.
Yeah. Okay. Do you ever consider Kickstarter as a possibility for funding your own work? You work professionally still, right?
Yeah.
And you have to balance your professional work with all this.
Yeah. It's funny because in the beginning I was a little, but this is not, I think that's a very kind of Danish approach to media and crowd surfing and all that. And I was a little bit like, but this is not serious. And I was like, stop that. Why are you saying that? Let's try it, see how it works.
Yeah.
That's there's definitely something about how you promote it and how sophisticated you promote your product. And it's also something a little bit difficult about things you haven't done yet. You know, a lot of what's on Kickstarter is something we've done this project, we've done this product, now we want to mass produce it. I've done this photo project, now I want to do a book.
Right, I wrote this script.
Yeah. So maybe, I mean...
Well, I'm just thinking, you're undertaking a big project here by making 4 chapters in an anthology.
Yeah.
And you've made one, so you have something to show for it.
Yeah, sure.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the toughest things about being a working artist is securing funding for what you do. Are you just paying for it yourself in this case?
For this first chapter here, I have, and then I've been applying some. I got $1 grant. You know, I try as much as possible to apply for grants.
Right, which is a goddamn job.
That's another job. I'm just trying to push it a little bit more now, see what I can get out of it. And of course, it's complicated being America and applying for the Danish funds.
Is it? Do they prefer people living in Denmark?
I don't know, but then it's definitely more complicated to apply for the American ones because I'm an immigrant. Right.
Well, I mean, the American system's very much the private sector too.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's about building it up now, you know, finding the people who find the project interesting, you know, and ask, are you maybe interested in, you know, participating in the next round here? And,
right. Just putting in the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very much about building it up. And that's also why I couldn't, you know, I was thinking at some point in the beginning when I was, you know, stubborn and saw the big picture on the wall, it's like, okay, this is going to come out at the same time, just like, boom, big bomb. But I mean, that's not possible in the position I am now.
Right.
And I think it's also fine. It's like, okay, setting the tone and then you communicating from there.
Right, and developing as you go.
Yeah.
You have to, you know, you can't control everything along the way, and happy accidents do happen and ideas come forth, etc. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. Now, really, I'd just call that inspiring. It really, you know, I took a lot of notes from my own personal work. I don't mean to be egomaniacal here, but I think Peter and I have a kind of similar sensibility in our work, which, you know, he's just gone the extra steps to develop that more. He's learned how to research, to think things through, to engage with the entire project on a much deeper level. And that's really inspiring for me. And I learned a lot about research, about reaching out to people, about how to develop ideas into directions which further the goal of the project. The whole thing is just, you know, the whole thing's really exciting, and he's doing a ton of projects. Like I said earlier, there's 4 of these coming up. Really exciting to see what happens next. He's going instantly back to work. In fact, the day this comes out, he's flying back to New York, and he said the day after that, he's going to Florida to start the next project. So that goes back once again to working hard. Can't avoid it. You can't avoid the fact that we just gotta work hard, people. If you got a dream, you got a goal, you got something you want to get done, you got to do it yourself, and you got to put in the time and the effort. I don't have much else to say this episode. I'm going to Israel on Friday, and I'm really excited about that. I plan to take some pictures, and I plan on trying to do a little research before I go because, you know, one thing is to learn something, another thing is to put it into practice. So I'm going to get going on that. I'll be in Israel all of next week. Going to release an episode during that time, but it will be one of those future internet time things where I will be gone. If you guys got any tips about Israel, please send them to me. I'll be there. Going to Tel Aviv, going to Jerusalem, going to try to go to Bethlehem. Cool. So we're really excited about the next coming weeks. We got, like I keep saying, a bunch of good episodes. We're redesigning the website. So if that's a little wonky in the next few days, that's also why. Trying to tighten that puppy up. Make it a little better. Got a designer helping us out. It's on. So, cool. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And now we're going to go enjoy some sun. This week's episode brought to you once again by the Undergang Armchair. Intro and outro music kindly provided by MGT Beats. Like I said earlier, link to that on both the show notes and the About page. Check it out. Man's a really good musician. Interstitial music today provided by RC. Also released on a Creative Commons license. Thank you so much for that. Link to that also on the show notes today. Please come visit us on the web, undergang.net. That is where we are. That is where you can hear all the episodes we've made. You can hear the progression from beginning to now, the direction we're going in. You can see pictures of artwork by the different guests. There's links. It's a good-ass place. I recommend you come and check it out. Also, engage with us on Twitter. It's a great platform. We are The Undergang on Twitter. I can't even tell you guys how much cool stuff you find on Twitter. Great platform. You can write to me, Ando, ANDO, at undergang.net. Tell me about Israel. Tell me about the podcast. Tell me about art. Engage. And finally, thanks so much for listening, guys. We appreciate each and every one of you. And remember, if you like the show, please tell a friend. Thank you. See you guys next week.